Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. And before we get into this episode, I do have a Kickstarter going on for my webtoon, Slice of Life. It's about an anime character that comes to life and falls in love with a high school cheerleader. So hopefully you guys could go check that out. There's about a week and change left for that Kickstarter. Now, of course, at the end of the video, we also talk about the viewers' pick of the week. So in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured on the show. Now, jumping into this week's comics, this is a bit of a heavier haul than previous weeks. Everything was delayed, and now they're like, let's release it all on this week. And honestly, I had to drop a couple of books because there's just so many books out there. I'm like, what are the books I'm gonna actually love to read? So I ended up with 12 books here, and number 12 for me was one of the bigger books from this week, and that is The Death of Justice League issue. It's Justice League issue 75, and I really like this cover. So I thought this was just one cover. It's actually plastic, and then you get to the real cover. So I thought, you know what, fancy. They're definitely spending some money on the quality of the book. And I'm not currently reading Justice League. I honestly don't remember the last time I read Justice League, and I've read here and there some of Williamson's more crisis-affected titles. So he had a couple of miniseries leading into this and kind of his plan for this. And I wasn't a huge fan of that build-up. I feel like DC's been building up to this moment for such a long time, and it's been using multiverse characters that was more for multiversity from a couple of years ago, more attached to Grant Morrison's story, which I wasn't such a big fan of. And then, just the teasing aspect. I just want something to happen. I feel like we've been teased for so many years, and I'm like, it doesn't matter anymore. So saying that, I feel like I kind of had that going on here, where there wasn't anything too exciting, because literally what happens is exactly what the title says, is that we kind of have this crisis look to the Justice League dying, or at least the main core. So you have like Superman dying, which I don't know if that's actually going to affect Action Comics and Superman, which again makes it like, if it's not affecting the other titles, does this really mean anything? But yeah, Wonder Woman, same thing. It's not really affecting her title either. And then you have the kind of leftover Justice Leagues like John Kent and Black Adam, because he has a movie coming out, so of course he has to be kind of the main role here. And it ends there. It ends with the Justice League kind of disappearing. And again, a lot of the characters involved in the previous Williamson books are here, so if you've been enjoying it, I think you're going to get a little bit more out of this book. If you, like me, pick this up because you want to know the hype of the Death of Justice League, I don't think there's as much build up here. I don't think it was as new reader friendly in that regard. And we'll get Dark Crisis issue 1 to test it out, but it doesn't really get me excited for Dark Crisis as a whole. So overall, giving that 2 stars. Artwork was really good for this book, though. So if you're looking for a flagship book with good art, you do have some good art style. So like I said, I gave it 2 stars, and that's number 12. Moving on to number 11, which another big book from DC, The Joker issue 14. Every single issue, I think it's the last issue of Joker. And then you're like, no, this is the second to last issue of Joker. And this is really a build-up issue. And that's kind of been my biggest problem with the recent issues of Joker. It's just really holding up that carrot of, will Jim Gordon kill the Joker? And it's kind of lost steam because of that. I don't think the pacing has been as steady for it. And, this issue we get to see the flashback of, well, what did happen the day the Joker disappeared, we'll say. And then everyone's kind of up against for Jim, and then in the end it's like, well, what did Jim do? And they're like, find out next issue. So it really was just a point A to point B issue to say exactly the thesis statement we already knew from past issues of, like, will Jim Gordon kill the Joker? This is not the first time we've heard this question. So it took a little away from me, and I thought the artwork transition wise was cool. I like seeing the transition between present and future, I guess we'll say, or present and past, depending on what timeline we're really following here. And, that was cool, but I'm not a huge fan of this style. It feels a little stoic to me. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Miss Marvel Beyond the Limit, issue 5. I enjoyed the beginning of this volume. I love the artwork. I'm a big fan of Andreas' art. I loved his work on Runaways, and I think it brought a lot of life to this book. But the arc itself just feels like, hey, we have a TV show coming up. We need a Miss Marvel story. Unlike, I think, some stuff we got with Jill G. Willow Wilson, obviously kind of crafting more of what's going on with the supporting characters, what's going on with Miss Marvel as a character her own, and really digging into more of the personal stories that, maybe are reminiscent to a Spider-Man story. And here it's just like, here's this bad guy, we gotta fight them. Bruno shows up, the Unstoppable Wasp shows up, they defeat them, and then there's a little bit of a cliffhanger where it's like, oh, there's gonna be more Miss Marvels. And, we don't have another Miss Marvel book that's an ongoing. We do have these like team up one shots that I guess is probably gonna play a part into that cliffhanger, but I want a real Ms. Marvel series. I think she deserves it, and she's a great character, and I just don't know if Marvel knows what they're doing with the character right now, and really just giving off these one-offs, because like, oh, we have a show, we need to have the character, but it's like, I wish they put a little bit more into let's make it ongoing and create even more mythology with her and more of her own character work. So overall, giving this 2.5 stars it was just kind of there and a little bit forgettable, honestly. So giving that number 10. So number 9 was a book I was really excited for, but it's an anthology type series, so it's hard with these. And that's Thor issue 24/issue 750. And the reason I was excited for this, A, I've been loving Thor. It's definitely one of my favorite Marvel titles out there right now. And B, there's a big event with Thor's father dying, kind of, and him now being part of the Hammer, and not everyone knowing that. So the pieces where they continue with that story was definitely the best, where we get to see Odin deal with his father's passing, what that means for him as a king. And then in the end, we get this big revelation that Valhalla is broken and Odin cannot go into it. And will that bring Valkyrie on board? I know there's like another Thor book coming out. I don't know if it's going to be connected to that, where Thor and Thor team up. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I wish this issue dealt with that. But there's so many other things that had to be tied in. Like, oh, here's this, Walt Simonson story. And then it's like, oh, well, here's a Jason Aaron story. And some connected. Like, we get a little bit from Loki here. And it's like, okay, we're going to get this from another book. Here's a teaser of that. And I appreciated those stories. But some of the more random ones, I'm like, oh, I guess it's just because they wanted to make this bigger and they want to make it an anniversary issue. But I'm like, did it need that? I think the story would have been stronger if it just followed what was going on in Thor right now. And what really sucks, and I guess not really sucks, but it's going to be broken up even more because we have the Hulk crossover event coming up as well, which Donny Cates obviously crafted because he's writing both. But I'm hoping it doesn't take away from this really strong Odin story that's going on that I find very fascinating and different. And that's kind of the shame of some of these anniversary stuff and event books, is that it takes away from the real story that's being told. So I was a little disappointed with that, because even though I think there was a lot of good pieces in this issue, I feel like that really outshined the actual really great story here, and great artwork as well, very dark and moody, I would say. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is Deathstroke Inc. issue 8. And this is the continuation of Shadow War. We're kind of in the middle of it, so there's not a huge progression. And for me, this was just a little lower because of the art. I'm not a huge Howard Porter fan. It's just not my style. It's just a lot darker than I expect. And there's not a ton of movement in here. It was Damian, I believe, met, because I've read, obviously, Robin and Deathstroke, so read them back to back, so it's kind of hard to tell which one happened where. I think the end of this issue was Robin and Ravager just meeting up with Deathstroke. So we don't even really get much in this story besides like a little bit of Slade and Respawn connecting, which I thought was fun. And then we kind of get the explanation of what happened between Talia and Batman. So they just kind of erased that kiss, saying, oh, we just wanted that as a cliffhanger. Never mind. We're not actually going to do anything with it. But there is definitely some little tidbits of like, oh, Deathstroke didn't actually kill Ra's al Ghul. Who did it? Was Talia behind it? So there's definitely interesting movement here, but it was a much slower issue than what we've gotten in the past, and even what we got in the Robin issue, which I'll talk about later. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7, a book I'm just having fun with, and that is Silk issue 4. It's a much more character-driven book than I would say plot-driven book. And in this one, we get to see Silk as an old woman, and she's like, okay, how do I tell my friends? What does this mean for me? And have I wasted my life? You know, who is Cindy? And I really like that as a more personal journey. I think it could have just been this really one-off comedic story of her being old, but I like that it was very character-driven, and it was just for Cindy to figure out, okay, well, who am I as a person, which is really what's driven this book to be such a solid run for Silk, in my opinion. Even though I don't know if I love the villain and the witches, but the small moments, I like, seeing Cindy with her friends. I like seeing Cindy with her brother. I love seeing Cindy with J. Jonah Jameson here. There's some really good comedic beats there. And the artwork is just fits so well for Silk. I think it's so seamless for the book. So overall, had a good time with this one and giving that 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 6, so I was talking about Deathstroke. Finally, we're going to talk about Robin, issue 13, which is the continuation of Shadow War, which I feel like has been a really solid event. I loved that first issue. I thought that was so good. And this issue, I think, did a good job at character work. I enjoyed where we got to see Batman and Robin butt heads here, but most importantly, it's kind of everybody butting heads and learning maybe that Deathstroke didn't kill Ra's al Ghul, like I mentioned before, and Damian kind of believing Respawn because he gets the revelation that Respawn is actually his brother. He's happy about that. So there's definitely some interesting just family business drama here. I didn't love the quick transition of Damian teaming up with Batman because that's been like the whole thing of like, Robin does not want to be with Batman, and I thought that was such a quick turn. But like I said, there's some interesting character work. For me, I thought the artwork was much better here. It's just a little bit more my style, a little bit cleaner. So I thought this issue worked a little bit more than the Deathstroke issue, and it moved the plot a tiny bit as well. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5. Now, this is a book that we're all very looking forward to talking about, and that is Amazing Spider-Man issue 1. I got 3 covers of this, but I'm just showing you my favorite, which is the Black Cat and Mary Jane cover. And I also got the Patrick Gleason cover, and I got the regular cover, honestly, just mostly for reading. I do like having the regular cover, and I'm like, I'll use that, and then I don't have to, like, touch the variant covers as much. But, with this issue, what I really liked about it went to the status quo of what we love about a Peter Parker Spider-Man book. You know, he's down on his luck. He, meets up with Johnny, but, 6 months have passed, so things have changed. We don't know what happened in between those 6 months, and he's actually angry with Johnny. Something happened between him and the Fantastic Four. He is not talking to Mary Jane, which we'll talk about later. Randy is getting engaged to Beetle. There's a lot of big moments. And then, you open up with Aunt May and Peter having conflict too. So it's just like a lot of these classic moments where you're like, oh, cool, this is a great way to start the run. There's definitely aspects that I'm a little concerned about, I guess. I'm not a huge fan of John Romita Jr.'s art. It's just not my style. It feels very bulky to me. So that kind of took me out of the book a little bit. I think this could have been, honestly, even maybe a pick of the week if it was for stronger art. And then the cliffhanger, which honestly I'm going to do a whole video on to take a deeper dive on the Mary Jane Peter Parker situation of like, why can't they be together? But and what that the kids mean, like what was going on in the end there. There's a part of me that loved that cliffhanger because like, oh cool, they're doing something different with Spider-Man, and then you like take a step back and you're like, but they're not really doing anything different with Spider-Man. They're just having conflict with Mary Jane and Peter, and that always happens. So again, I want to do a whole video on that, so I'm not going to touch upon it too much here. But overall, I enjoyed the issue, and I think it was a good direction for the book, and curious to see where it's going to end up going. So, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, a book that I've been pleasantly surprised by, and that's Punisher issue 2. I don't think I've ever went past a Punisher issue 1 book, so that's already achievement. I've never really gotten into Punisher, but this just has been drawing me, where we get this really interesting intercut between Punisher, Frank as a child, and just the emotion and rawness there. Love the artwork. Same artist who does Outcast for Image Comics. I just love the tone there. And then, kind of tackling the big subject of gun violence with Punisher and violence in general, and then weaving this in with the Hand, a side that we've never seen with Punisher. And just seeing something different with the character is always a pleasant surprise. And what I like in comics and superhero comics is where you could take the root of who the character is and not change who he is or they are, and then but still do something different with them. I think Punisher has really hit the nail on the head with that. And the artwork is really strong for this one, from the action to, again, the flashbacks. I like that they're using two different artists. So overall, really solid book. So curious to see where it's going to go. We also have his wife involved now. So where are the kids? A lot of things to explore with this series. So overall, giving that four stars. And that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Saga, issue 58. Saga's back. It's $2.99, so it feels a little shorter than some of the other books that you're reading right now, but it is $2.99. Can't complain to that. And there's a lot that happens in this issue, especially just reminiscing about the father and what that means about the mom's relationships with other men. And we get to see a few other characters appear here. Seems like somebody who's not going to be a great guy. First appearance, and then even her business partner not really being the guy that we thought he was, and where that's going to end up going. But the thing that really brought this to my top 5 was the cliffhanger, where we're going to see everyone die, possibly, and they're like, well, we're not going to stop with just the family. We're not just going to stop with the daughter. We want to kill everyone they've ever met. So we're really going back to the journey of this series. So artwork, as always, is so good, and it's just a great creative team. So yeah, I thought this was a very solid issue. So overall, giving Saga 4 stars, and that's number 3. Moving on to number 2. Rogue Sun, issue 3. This just keeps climbing up my top 5 because I just think every issue keeps topping itself. This issue in particular just tackled the family stuff so well. So we get to really learn a little bit more about this family dynamic, where we get to see our main character. He is talking to his dad and says, hey, I think my son might have, been part of trying to kill me. And he's like, okay, that's weird. Let's see what he's up to. And then you realize he didn't want to kill him. He actually wanted to resurrect him. And there's just this really conflict and complicated relationship between the children and their father. And what I love is that we don't really know what the truth is. Who is the reliable narrator? We just don't know. So you're just kind of going with the flow with it. And then in the end, you get to see the daughter, who's kind of been giving the ropes to our main characters, like, yeah, I'm gonna, get this villain to, get out of jail pretty much and team up with her because I just want power, and then you're curious of, like, is she gonna be a hero and use this for good reasons? Is she gonna be a villain? Does she deserve the power? Does she not? There's just so many interesting personalities being played here in this one issue that really just builds the cast so well to make an even stronger book. And you're still delving into the mythology and showcasing villains here and showing what this world's going to be like and a bit more of the magical side of things. But overall, the core is the family and the core is the character work, which I've just been super impressed with. And the art is really good too, even though there's I think there's a good mixture of here's some talking heads and making that look interesting with, like, here's some really awesome action sequences. So overall, giving that 4 stars, and that is my number 2 pick. Moving on to number 1, which is Dark Knights of Steel, issue 6. And this is a really great build-up issue. So this is the way to do a point A to point B, where the character work and just the way the alternate universe is unraveling is so interesting. Where at the beginning, we find out maybe Constantine and the king had maybe a romantic relationship, and Tim is outed as, maybe that's not the best choice of words, but he is outed as a spy, and everyone's like, oh, get away, and it really is just culmination of, yeah, we're gonna go to war, and everyone not really having enough information, where you thought maybe Superman was a bad guy, but it looks like he's just trying to protect his sister. He might still be a bad guy, I don't know. But when he's wrapped around the lasso of truth and talking to Lois for the first time, which was just such a fun interaction, he believes that his sister didn't do anything wrong. So, and then the Amazons are kind of being part of this war, and obviously Wonder Woman and Zala are very connected to each other romantically. So there's just a lot of great drama within families, but then building that war so well. And then you get introductions to characters like Roz and, again, Superman and Lois interacting. So there's there's such a plethora of wonderful character moments and building this world through character moments, all while you're kind of getting to this bigger moment of a war. And the artwork is just stunning. And I mean, there's just these small moments where like the Amazons are like, man cannot touch this boat. And he's like, well, I'm not touching it. And he kind of floats a little. And just the way the paneling is for that was just so great. It's just a wonderful book. And you're not reading this. This is A, one of the best comics on stands, but B, I would say the best DC comics on stands right now. So go check it out. Overall, I'm going to give that one 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and that is my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below what were your pick of the weeks. And the viewers' pick of the week from last week was Wolverine issue 20. And here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.